The ambulance siren was getting louder, echoing through the neighborhood walls, and I felt a small wave of relief. My father was inside, struggling to breathe, and the dispatcher had promised they were almost here. I stood at the end of my driveway, waiting for the flashing lights to turn into my street. But they didn't. Instead, the siren stopped near the front gate. That made no sense. I ran toward the entrance and saw the ambulance sitting outside the closed community gate, and right in front of it stood Mrs. Dalton, the HOA president, holding her clipboard like this was some kind of meeting. She was arguing with the paramedic through the driver's window. "You cannot enter without gate authorization," she said firmly. "This is private property." The paramedic looked stunned. "Ma'am, we have a medical emergency." I rushed up, breathless. "Open the gate. My father is inside." She turned to me slowly. "Your access privileges were temporarily suspended after last month's violation." I stared at her. "You suspended my gate access?" "You refused to pay the landscaping fine and caused a scene at the HOA meeting," she replied calmly. "Actions have consequences." Behind her, the ambulance lights kept flashing. The paramedic leaned out. "Sir, we need access now. What's going on?" I punched in my gate code. Red light. Denied. Mrs. Dalton folded her arms. "Emergency vehicles still require approval. That's in the bylaws." "My father can't breathe," I snapped. She didn't move. "Rules apply to everyone." Time felt heavy. Every second stretched. I could almost hear my father gasping inside the house, even though I was standing at the gate. I looked at the paramedic. "If you reroute, at least 10 minutes, maybe more." 10 minutes we didn't have. Mrs. Dalton adjusted her glasses. "If you submit a written request, I can approve it." I looked at her for a long second, then something inside me went very calm. I stepped away from the gate and pulled out my phone. She gave a small smile. "Calling your lawyer won't fix this." "I'm not calling my lawyer," I said quietly. I pressed a different number. The line connected fast. "I need immediate air medical extraction. Patient critical. Coordinates sending now." Mrs. Dalton frowned. "What are you doing?" I looked up at the clear sky above our quiet neighborhood. "You wanted control of the gate," I said. In the distance, faint as first, I heard it. Rotor blades. And I smiled slightly. "Let's see you block the sky." At first, she laughed. "A helicopter?" she said like I had just made a joke. "You can't just land a helicopter in a residential community." The sound grew louder. Not imagination, not hope. Real. The paramedics in the ambulance stepped out and looked up. One of them shielded his eyes from the sun. "Is that for you?" he asked. I nodded. 3 minutes out. Mrs. Dalton's face changed. "You don't have approval for that. You need HOA clearance for aircraft landing inside community property." I almost smiled at the word aircraft. "It's not landing on community property," I said calmly. "It's landing on mine." Her expression tightened. "Your backyard isn't zoned for—" "It's registered as a private emergency landing zone," I interrupted. She blinked. "That's not possible." The helicopter was close now. The wind started picking up dust along the road. Neighbors stepped outside, looking up, confused. Some pulled out their phones. Kids pointed at the sky. Mrs. Dalton grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police. You can't create this kind of disturbance." "Please do," I replied. The ambulance crew looked relieved. "We'll move to your property," one of them said. "Lead the way." I turned and started running back toward my house. The helicopter was now directly above the neighborhood, loud enough to shake windows. The sound filled everything. There was no more arguing over rules. When we reached my backyard, the pilot circled once, then lowered carefully. The wind from the blades flattened the grass and pushed leaves everywhere. My father was already on a stretcher when the flight medic jumped out. Mrs. Dalton ran into the yard seconds later, hair blown wild by the wind, shouting something about violations and fines. No one could hear her over the rotor noise. The flight medic looked at her once and said sharply, "Step back, ma'am." She froze. Within moments, they had my father secured inside the helicopter. The paramedic from the ambulance gave me a quick nod. "You made the right call," he said. The helicopter lifted off, rising above the houses, above the gate, above every rule she thought she controlled. Silence slowly returned as it disappeared into the distance. Neighbors were staring at Mrs. Dalton now. Someone muttered, "She blocked an ambulance?" Another voice, "Over HOA rules?" Her confidence was gone, completely. Police sirens approached, real ones this time. She looked at me, but she didn't have that calm smile anymore. "You overreacted," she said weakly. I looked back at the closed gate behind her. "No," I said quietly. "You did." The police cars pulled up fast, lights flashing against the quiet houses. Officers stepped out, already asking questions. The ambulance crew spoke first. They explained how they were denied entry. One of them even pointed at the gate keypad. Mrs. Dalton tried to interrupt. "They didn't follow proper authorization procedure." The officer cut her off. "Ma'am, did you prevent emergency medical access?" "It's a private community," she insisted. "We have rules." The officer's voice stayed calm. "Rules don't override emergency response." Neighbors had gathered now. Phones were recording. Whispers were spreading faster than the helicopter had. "She actually blocked them? Over a fine?" Mrs. Dalton looked around and realized something had shifted. The same people who once supported her strict policies were staring at her differently. The officer turned to me. "Sir, is your father stable?" "He's en route to County General. Air transport cut the time in half." The officer nodded. Then he looked back at Mrs. Dalton. "We'll need a statement from you, and we'll be reviewing the gate access logs." Her face went pale. "Logs?" "Yes, ma'am, including who disabled his emergency access." She didn't answer, because we both knew. She had manually suspended my gate code after our argument at the HOA meeting. She called it temporary compliance enforcement. She even emailed me about it. What she didn't expect was that the email would now matter a lot more than a landscaping fine. An officer asked quietly, "Did you deny access knowing there was a medical emergency?" She hesitated. That hesitation was enough. The crowd murmured again. I felt my phone buzz. It was the hospital. I stepped aside to answer. My father was stable. Oxygen levels improving. They said the helicopter made the difference. I closed my eyes for a second. When I walked back, Mrs. Dalton wasn't arguing anymore. She was sitting on the curb, silent, while officers spoke to her. One of the neighbors shook his head. "All this over HOA power?" I looked at the gate one more time. 9 minutes earlier, she thought she controlled everything behind it. Now the entire neighborhood had seen what that control really cost. And this time, it wasn't about fines. It was about accountability. By evening, the story had already spread beyond the neighborhood. Someone had uploaded a video of the helicopter landing. Another clip showed the ambulance sitting outside the gate while Mrs. Dalton stood in front of it. You could clearly hear the paramedics saying, "We have a critical patient," and you could clearly hear her replying, "You need authorization." There was no editing needed. The truth was loud enough. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that same night. I didn't plan to go. I was at the hospital with my father, sitting beside his bed, listening to the steady beep of the monitor. That sound meant more to me than any argument ever could. But my phone kept buzzing. Neighbors were texting, "You need to see this. She's blaming you. She says you created unnecessary drama." I stepped into the hallway and opened the live stream someone had started. Mrs. Dalton was standing at the front of the clubhouse trying to control the room. The situation was exaggerated, she was saying. Alternative access was available. A man in the crowd stood up, 10 minutes away. Another voice shouted, "You blocked an ambulance." She raised her hands. "I was enforcing policy. We cannot allow chaos every time someone claims an emergency." I walked back into my father's room, looked at him resting peacefully, then stepped out again and typed one message into the community group chat. I have the email where she suspended my gate access, time-stamped 2 days before the emergency. I also have the dispatcher recording confirming critical condition. Within seconds, the room on the live stream went quiet. Someone read my message out loud. Mrs. Dalton's face froze. "You disabled his emergency access?" a board member asked her slowly. "It was temporary," she said, but her voice had lost its strength. Another neighbor stood up. "My wife has a heart condition. What if that was us?" Silence again. Then one of the older residents spoke, calm but firm. "This isn't about landscaping fines anymore. This is about safety." For the first time since I moved into that neighborhood, Mrs. Dalton didn't have an answer ready. A vote was called right there, no delay, no committees. By the end of that meeting, her authority was suspended pending legal review. I looked at my father through the glass window of his hospital room. He opened his eyes briefly and squeezed my hand when I walked back in. 9 minutes. That's all it took to show the entire neighborhood what really matters. She tried to control a gate, but she forgot something simple. You can close an entrance. You can't control consequences. 2 days later, the official letter arrived. Not from the HOA, from the county. An investigation had been opened for obstruction of emergency services. The gate logs had already been pulled. The email where she disabled my access was attached. The dispatcher's recording was requested. Things were moving fast. Mrs. Dalton tried to send one final message in the community group chat. She wrote that she had acted in good faith and that she was being unfairly targeted, but no one defended her this time. Instead, people started sharing their own stories. "My food delivery was blocked last month. They fined me for parking during a storm. They locked out contractors without notice." One by one, small complaints turned into a pattern. The board members resigned quietly over the weekend. An interim safety committee was formed. First decision: emergency vehicles get permanent, unrestricted access. No approvals, no delays, no exceptions. The gate system was reprogrammed the same afternoon. When my father came home from the hospital, the entire street was different. Neighbors stood outside clapping softly as the car pulled in. Not dramatic, just respectful. Mrs. Dalton's house had a "for sale" sign in the yard. I didn't feel victory. I didn't feel revenge. I felt relief. That helicopter didn't just carry my father to safety, it lifted the illusion of control off the entire neighborhood. 9 minutes changed everything. She thought rules made her powerful, but in the end, it was one simple truth that mattered more than any HOA bylaw. When someone's life is on the line, you don't stand in front of the gate, you get out of the way.